I said earlier that dabbling will rob you of your time and productivity. And I want to explain why that happens. So, if you've done much reading on productivity, time management, all that kind of stuff, you know that there's a cost to changing gears, right? That getting into a task takes a bunch of time. This happens for different reasons, whether it's getting the software and the websites open, or if you're a writer like myself, the procrastination that goes into it can actually play a big role. All of us, we have this lag that goes into starting a task and kind of switching tasks. And what happens when you're doing multiple things, let's say you're trying to juggle 4 different projects. You have a part-time job, a freelancing job, you're trying to have an online course and trying to write a book. That's kind of the common thing I hear from a lot of people. Is if you're doing all that, let's say you have 6 productive hours in the day, which is a bit of a stretch for a lot of us. And I don't mean 6 hours at a desk, but I mean 6 hours where you're really producing, you're getting things done. Because there's a lot of kind of warm-up time and break time and stuff like that. So let's say you have 6 hours. In theory, if you're doing 4 things, that should give you an hour and a half per project. But it never works that way, right? When we change gears, each time we lose a percentage of productivity. Now, chalk it up whatever percent you want to give it. Let's say you're losing 20% every time you change gears. When you go from one thing where you have 100% of your focus, you add 2. Now, maybe each of those is getting 40% and 20% there is getting lost to transitions, to distractions, to other things. Throw in a third, maybe you're down to 25%, 20% for each of these things. I would guess that for a lot of people trying to juggle 4 projects at once, from my own experience when I've made this mistake, you're maybe getting 40% productivity out of yourself. And that's a big problem, because the other problem with dabbling is it's robbing you of your success. And here's how that happens. Anything you're trying to do, if you're trying to work for yourself, guess what? We live in an open economy. That means there's competition. And anything worth doing is going to have competition. The more appealing the industry you want to enter is, the harder it will be to compete, because it's more appealing, right? There's not as many people applying for jobs delivering garbage in the slums as there are applying for jobs to be like the poster boy for, I don't know, cotton candy. And your job is to eat cotton candy all day. It makes sense. There's more competition for the things people want to do more. So if you're only giving a quarter of yourself to each of your projects, and really, because we know of how the time management works out, that means you're really only giving 10, maybe 15% of yourself to each of those projects. How will you compete in any of those areas with 15% of you? I couldn't do it. I absolutely couldn't do it. I don't know anyone who could do it. Because you'll be competing with the people who are giving 100% of themselves. So 10, 15% of you versus 100% of them. They're driven, they've cut off all other options, they have no distractions, and they're giving all their time and energy. And you, 15%, who's going to win this outcome, right? Now, the other thing that happens is if you have multiple options and you're dabbling, you're way more likely to quit. There's a great quote I love from Will Smith, and it's, "Why have a plan B? It distracts from plan A." And if you have a plan A, B, C, and D, not only are you distracting from all of them from each other, but you're also giving yourself an easy out. You ever notice how there's all these stories of millionaires and success stories, and it always seems like they pulled it off right after they were in their low? Not all the time, but a lot of the stories are that way. The company was against the wall, they needed more funding, they were about to go bankrupt, and then they kept going, and they pulled it off. Well, there's something to that, right? There's always highs and lows in business. And the people who go through the lows and keep going, who have that grit, tend to be the people who succeed because they push through the tough times. There's always a dip before success. There's a struggle, there's that last push. In relationships even, this is a term that's used in counseling, where often as you're resolving an issue between a couple, that's when there will be the most turmoil, the most tension. Things have to get worse before they get better as you deal with that stuff. And it happens in business, right? Now, if you have one option, you're doing one thing, When it gets tough, you keep going because you don't want to quit. Quitting is looked down upon in our society, right? We don't want to quit, so we keep going. But when you have 4 options, you're not quitting, you're shifting your focus. It's a way we can lie to ourselves, because I've done this too. Please know I've done this before. When we have other options, we can lie to ourselves and not be quitting, but I'm going to put this on hold for now. I'm going to adjust my focus. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to, look at, focusing more on this area. Whatever we want to tell ourselves, it's a lie. We're quitting. But we're not quitting, right? And so what happens is, let's say you have 4 options, and option B has tons of promise. It's great, but it starts to get a little hard. It starts to get tough. Now, well, normally you would just stick to it. You would fight through and you would turn option B into a success. Now, you also have option A, C, and D. So why not just kind of drop B? Because it's not comfortable, it's not fun, it's not easy right now. So you drop it and you do the other 3. And that's why dabbling robs you of your success. Because option B there, you may have been on the cusp of big success. You might have been about to turn the corner and get exactly where you needed to be to turn it into something huge. And you quit because you had other options and you were invested in too many different places. So people will look at me and say, well, you've published 12 books, you have 8 training courses up there, you have all this different stuff you're doing. How can you tell me not to dabble? I have published 12 books. I am not currently trying to write 12 books. Actually, right now, I am not trying to write 1 book. I had one in mind and I was working with an editor on it. And then I realized that I was splitting my time too much between this training that I really wanted to make and the book. And I decided that I'm going to just fully put the book on hold. Not do a little bit, not whatever, but it's on hold until I finish my current project. So that's the difference. You can have a ton of things in your portfolio, in your past, or that you manage, but you don't do them all at the same time. You build one, and then you build the next, and then you build the next. And that's how you can have all these different things, but not be dabbling and not be spreading yourself too thin. So the other night I was having dinner with a friend here in Prague, and he's had this crazy success recently, so much, so well deserved. He decided back in February that he wanted to really focus on building a channel on YouTube around politics. He's someone who's into video editing and design and really into politics and had some opinions on it he wanted to be sharing and things like that. And he decided he wanted to go all into YouTube. And so that's what he did. With no prior experience on YouTube, anything like that, he jumped full in and started his channel. And since February, so from February to March, I was kind of watching it. He'd get, a couple hundred views a video, things like that. By April, he was up to 1,000 subscribers. Then May up to about same thing, maybe 2,000, something like that. And then we met up to talk 2 weeks ago, and he had 20,000 subscribers, which is huge growth. If you don't know kind of YouTube and that, to have 20,000 subscribers within your first 6 months is huge. Then last night, or a few nights back when we were out, he was telling me he's past 40,000. That kind of growth is insane. And what we started talking about is how amazing it feels to focus, to just do one thing at a time, right? Before he was juggling a bunch of different projects, and now he's just doing YouTube. And to wake up and just only think of that one thing, to focus on it and to do it, it's an amazing feeling. And I know this because I go through periods of really focusing, like just gonna write a book, that's all I'm doing, and periods of dabbling. And I know that when I'm really focused in, it's an incredible feeling that you're going somewhere, that you have a direction, that every minute you spend working, you're producing something. Whereas when you're dabbling, when you're doing a bunch of things at once, I always feel like I'm drained, like I'm putting in this time, but I don't exactly know where it goes. I'll look back on a month or 2 months and say, what did I really accomplish then? Like, how much actually got done? I don't mean how many hours did I work, but what was accomplished? Did I get new customers? Did I increase my income? Did I reach more people. What happened? So in this video, we focused on two main things. First, on making a decision before you're 100% ready, using the 70% rule, and using this as a tool for building your experience and building the knowledge you have about yourself. So that way you can improve your gut instincts and your intuition, so that in the future you can make decisions easier and easier just by trusting yourself and your own experience. And then I talked about dabbling. And there's a reason I included dabbling here with the 70% rule, is that if you're dabbling, even using the 70% rule, making decisions, that if you're dabbling and you're doing a lot of things at once, you're going to limit the amount that you can improve your gut instinct and your intuition, because you're giving yourself all these outs and you don't have clear failure points. So we learn a lot when we fail, but we have to acknowledge we failed. And so when you're dabbling, like we discussed, if you have all these different options and you just sort of turn away from one, so you don't admit, oh, this failed, or this didn't work, or I'm quitting this, you don't gain that experience. So you just keep dabbling. And that's why I see people that, when we're all 21 and starting out on our entrepreneurial routes, we all kind of dabbled a bit. And I see some of the people and they're still dabbling. They're in their 30s now and they're still dabbling. And that's because they've never learned. They've never given themselves the ability to try something, go all in and fail. And so dabbling not only robs us of our experience and our ability to build this intuition, but it also, as we discussed, robs us of our time and our potential success, because we often will end up quitting way too early because we give ourselves all these exit paths. So one of the best ways to fix this is by giving yourself focused periods of time, weeks, months, or even years, on one thing at a time. Bring that to fruition and then move on to the next project. By doing so, you'll give yourself 100% of your energy and your focus, and you'll get 100% of the experience and the learning from that. Now, of course, when you focus on just one thing, it's going to bring up fear, because there's a fear of failure, there's a fear of rejection, there's a fear of loss, because you just have this one option. It's like falling in love, right? It's scary. If you fall in love, you're setting yourself up to be hurt. But what are you going to do? Never fall in love? Come on, that's ridiculous. You got to go for it and just know that it could happen and face those fears. Now, when it comes to falling in love, we usually have enough positive things fighting that fear, right? All right, I feel fear and worry that we could break up, but I feel crazy madly in love and there's some naughty stuff and like laughing and all this good stuff, right? So usually we pull towards love. But we don't always have that in business, all that goodness pulling us right away, because a lot of business is working towards kind of a later goal and overcoming these hurdles. Well, in the next video, I want to discuss how you can overcome this fear using the turning pro mindset. How you can adjust your thinking and adjust your behavior so that you're not only able to produce more, but you're able to keep going through the lows, through the self-doubts, through the fear, and keep producing and keep moving forward. And whether you're going through a high where you can very easily get distracted, or a low where you can get fearful and end up changing your mind or quitting, whether you're going through that high or that low, I'm going to show you how you can use this mindset shift to keep going forward. I'm also going to look at how turning pro can be very good for business in terms of your income, your client relationships, and just about everything else you're doing. And I will catch you in the next video. Till next time, to your freedom, catch you somewhere in the world. Have an awesome day.